Noswaith dda iawn I chi gyd a chroeso cynnes iawn I webinar cyswllt ffermio sydd heno yn rhoi gwybodaeth I ni am gynllun grant tyfu mwyn yr amgylchedd. Good evening and a very warm welcome to Farming Connect's webinar on the Welsh Government's Growing for the Environment grant scheme. I'm Irwin Williams and I will be chairing the webinar tonight. Parts of the meeting will be in Welsh, so if you do require translation, then please click on the translation tab at the bottom of your screen and select the English. If at any point you do experience any difficulties with the translation, then please let us know through the Q&A button. Wel, bwriad y webinar heno yw roi gwybod I chi ni mwy am y cynllun newydd yma sydd wedi cael ei datblygu gan Lywodraeth Cymru, sef grant tyfu mwyn yr amgylchedd. A bydd Richard Evans a Kevin Taylor o Lywodraeth Cymru yn ymuno gyda ni I esbonio'r cynllun grant. Byddwn ni hefyd yn clywed oddi wrth Dr Delana Davies o Gyswllt Ffermio am rai o'r prosiectau sydd yn mynd ymlaen ar y rhwydwaith o ffermydd arddangos sydd gan Cyswllt Ffermio. Yna bydd cyfle I chi I holi cwestiynau I Richard a Kevin ar y diwedd. Ni'n gobeithio cadw'r webinar I ryw awr ac os bydd na gwestiynau sydd heb cael eu hateb yn ystod yr awr yna, newn ni hateb nhw ar ôl yr cyfarfod a newn ni gylchredeg yr atebion. Byddwn ni hefyd yn gallu cylchredeg copïau o'r slides bydd yn cael ei dangos heno gan Richard, felly does dim rhaid I chi wneud nodiadau heb law bod chi am wneud hynny wrth gwrs. Felly, mae'n bleser gen I nawr gyflwyno Richard Evans o Is-adran Amaeth Cynaladwyedd a Datblygu Llywodraeth Cymru sydd wedi bod yn gyfrifol am ddatblygu'r cynllun grant newydd yma. A gweud y gwir, mae wyneb Richard Evans yn eitha cyfarwydd I bawb nawr achos chwarae teg mae fe wedi cyflwyno sawl webinar I ni dros yr misoedd. Felly, bydd Richard yn cyflwyno'r manylion iddon ni heno, ond bydd fe a Kevin yn ateb y cwestiynau ar y diwedd. Felly, gyda hynna o eiriau, hoffwn ni tawi Richard yn fawr iawn ato ni, cynnes iawn.
Diolch Irwin. Bydd y cyflwyniad yn cael ei rannu nawr, so the presentation will come up now. Right, felly y grant tyfu mwyn yr amgylchedd, so the new scheme Growing for the Environment. So the aim of this scheme, if go to the next slide, is very simply to support growing and utilisation of crops. Now, for the first round, it'd be a cover crop. We'll come to that later. But crops that result in improvements in environmental performance of the business. So this is basically an environmental scheme. It's not support for any crops. It's crop for a purpose. However, with higher input costs now as well, that it does enable farmers to mitigate some of the costs of increased fertilizer costs and fodder costs through the opportunity to graze the cover crop and utilise the cover crop as green manure for the following crop. So that's for the autumn crop. So there are a few advantages to it for existing farm businesses. So in this year, there'll be two application windows. One autumn sown crops and another spring sown crops later in the autumn. I'm going to concentrate first on the autumn sown crops, and then we'll come to the details. I'll give you an overview of the spring one towards the end of the presentation. So the application window opened on 20th of June and will close on the 29th of July. There's an indicative budget of 350,000 available for this window. So this is the autumn crop window. There's only one option for this window, and that is an unsprayed cover crop following autumn harvesting of cereal or maize. So where soil is usually left bare, we want to support growing of a crop to take up the nutrients so they're not don't leach from the soil, and to avoid soil erosion and just maintain the drainage and so forth in the soil. So For individual applications, the maximum grant is £5,000. The minimum is equivalent to 1 hectare, so the payment rate for 1 hectare. We provide a support, a contribution towards establishment costs, and the payment rate will be on a per hectare basis. So the payment will be a standard payment per hectare. So in terms of the requirements for the cover crop, as I mentioned earlier, there's a minimum area of 1 hectare, although that can be split into 2 or more field parcels. No artificial fertilizer, manure or slurry to be applied between the harvesting the preceding crop and 15th of February. So if you're harvesting maize later in the autumn or the cereal crop before that, don't apply any slurry or fertilizer after that period. We will be asking all applicants to do a soil test as part of the contract. Now that soil test is to inform the nutrient requirements for the following crop. So in the spring 2023 crop that will come after the cover crop. That takes an opportunity for farmers to take advantage then of the green manure, the nutrients that are in the soil or are retained in the soil for the following spring. So that can be taken at any time, either pre-sowing or during the winter, but prior to the claim stage. There will be a requirement to include a minimum of 2 crop species, which are suitable for autumn germination. More details of these will be in the guidance in terms of the options for the cropping, but that's the main one is 2 crop species. You'll have to sow certified seed at recommended seed rate, and the inclusion of perennial ryegrass or some cereal crops would not be eligible. There is a limit on some crops such as Italian ryegrass in terms of the sowing rate for the crops. It's 15 kilograms per hectare for Italian ryegrass, and that will have to grow with another companion crop as well. So these are in more detail in the guidance, but it does give you an idea of the requirements. So in terms of eligibility, it would be the standard requirements for many of our schemes: a private producer of agricultural products, the minimum 3 hectares of eligible agricultural land, or demonstrate the 550 standard labour hours. That is quite standard as with previous schemes. You will submit your application on RPW online, so you'll find the link to the application page on your RPW online account. The application is very straightforward. You will, as there's only one option in the autumn crop, you will select a field parcel. So a map of your holding will be shown in front of you. You select a field parcel, confirm the area, and submit. There are a few questions that you will, in terms of confirming as you go along, but the application is as simple as that, really, using the online system. All applicants will be scored at the end of the application period, so it's not a first come, first serve. We'll wait for all applicants to submit by the closing date, and then we'll rank and score all applications according to a scoring criteria that we've published in the guidance. We will be using our environmental maps to prioritise area where we get the greatest return. And then the higher scoring applicants will be selected and offered a contract first. As with other schemes, you will get an offer and you'll have to accept the contract within 30 days. If you don't select, that offer is withdrawn, and if somebody has not been selected or offer a contract after selection, they will be offered that contract, and so on until the budget has gone. looking back there, I don't think I mentioned the actual payment rate per hectare. The payment rate for a cover crop is £117 per hectare. So that is a contribution towards the establishing cost. So you will establish the crop in the autumn. You have to maintain the crop in situ until the 15th of February, at which time you can either graze it, cut it, spray it off, or cut it off, or destroy it, ready for the following crop. After that date, you have, so between the 15th of February and 30th of April to submit your claim. The claim again will be through your online RPW online account, and the claim will be very simple, is that we will need the area that you've planted and supporting documentation. So the supporting documentation are evidence of a soil test. So this would be a lab report confirming the pH, P&K status of the field parcel, a copy of the seed invoices, a copy of the seed ticket, which shows the seed mixture, so that we can establish what is the seed mixture you've sown, and a copy of contracting invoice if you've used contractors. If you've used your own machinery, that doesn't apply. And then geotag photographs, a minimum of 3 geotag photographs. One just before the field is sown, so prior to cultivations. One during the cultivations and sowing activity, so that'll show the date of sowing as well for us. And one on or after the 15th of February 2023, showing that the crop is still in situ, so it hasn't been grazed or cut or sprayed from on that date. And also we require a copy of a field activity record. So this is very much a diary of or list of activities. So on a certain date, you will say sown on a certain date, an example of seed mixture, and the same, go any activity in that field up to destroying the crop. So if you just go back a couple of slides there, and again, please. So just to finish on the autumn crops then, there's one option, one payment rate, and the requirement is to keep that crop until the 15th of February. The application and claim are reasonably straightforward, especially for people who've done previous schemes using the online RPW online. And in terms of our evidence will be the supporting documentation. And just to note as well, we will be trialling Earth observation to monitor these crops. So satellite imagery to make sure that the crop is growing in situ and it is in place on the 15th. So that is in effect a brief run through the autumn sowing crop, and the guidance are currently available online. So I'll just briefly go on to the spring application window that will open later in the autumn. We haven't got an exact date yet, but the date will be publicised on the website as soon as we've confirmed it, and through GLAD and other communications. The payment rate will vary from different crops. So where I mentioned the cover crop was £117 per hectare. So depending on the various options for the spring crown, the payment rate will vary. So the more expensive options will likely have a higher payment rate and so forth. But the application process would be very similar to what I mentioned that and for the autumn window. There will be a few differences. One key one is that the crop will have to be utilised on the farm. So we're not supporting crops to be grown and sold. So the options or the potential options that we are developing, this is subject to change, and a lot more detail will be provided in the guidance when we publish the guidance. So there will be an option for mixed lays. So these will either be mixed or herbal lays, depending what you call them. So a mix of a certain percentage of grasses, legumes and herbs. There would be an option for protein crops, field beans, peas and so forth. That can be either to be taken through for combining as cereals or as whole crop. There would be forage crops, lucerne for instance, an option for unsprayed root crops and unsprayed spring cereals, and also a cover crop, which is more spring-summer. So this is some new activity in terms of undergrowing maize before harvesting, so that might be included as well. So these are the broad options that will be available, but that really gives you a heads up now as you're planning what you're doing in the autumn and in next spring, that there will be an application window for these, and the contracts will be issued in the winter, so probably just in December time, so in plenty of time for sowing in the spring. So the guidance are available on the usual web pages for the Welsh Government, and the application dates for the spring one will be published there as well. And we'll probably take some questions, so give you time to think for the questions now, and we'll take those later on this evening.
Diolch yn fawr iawn, Richard. Thank you very much for that clear presentation.